Given that I have only a few minutes, I have to be brief and just offer you or share with you a few points. First, there is, in the part of the world where I come from, which is the high north, an increasing concern for the fate of small-scale fisheries and fishing people. Will they survive under the pressures of globalization, industrialization, global warming, and so forth? A problem, as I see it, is this. Because small-scale fisheries and communities in the Western world and in the North are part of countries that are economically relatively well off and with governing systems that works pretty well, the assumption is often that there is no real reason to worry about them. Whatever happens to small-scale fishing people, there is a welfare state to guarantee that they are okay and that their communities and culture are safe. To this, I would say, as in the song lyrics, it ain't necessarily so. Also in the North, small-scale fishing people, be they indigenous or non-indigenous, are being marginalized. And it happens to the extent that they in many instances risk becoming an extinct species. It happens also for many of the same reasons that small-scale fishing people in the tropical south are becoming marginalized. Therefore, the solutions that we may perceive and propose for small-scale fishing people in the south would largely be the same as those of the north, or for the north. For instance, solutions pertaining to their rights. This brings me to my second point. We have at this conference, and especially today, heard arguments and seen people wearing T-shirts stating that fishing rights are also human rights. It has been argued, and I think that's also a precise, correct observation. The perception has been there that fishing rights have typically been regarded as a handy management tool. Fishing rights have also been seen as something that at the level of government is giving out to fishing people. The human rights perspective, as was stated in the previous keynotes today, is a perspective that is very different. It states that people have rights to begin with, and that these rights are intact regardless of what governments do or are willing to accept. This is because human rights are fundamental and they are universal. The fact is, however, that we, after 60 years since the UN Declaration of Human Rights was inaugurated, we are still witnessing severe human rights violations being committed to people and peoples around the world, including fishing people. This is indeed among humanity's greatest tragedies. I am not sure if we can say that we are moving in the right direction as far as respecting human rights are concerned. There is, for instance, still a way to go until it is generally recognized that fishing rights are also human rights, and that fishing rights cannot be determined in a way that violates them. The recent decision of the UN Human Rights Commission regarding Iceland's fishing quota system testifies to this fact. Fishing rights that contradict basic human rights are, of course, not acceptable and will not be sustainable. Notably, it is a very positive development that the General Assembly of the UN last year adopted a Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. It is a statement of historic significance that should inspire small-scale fishing people regardless of their ethnic background. I say this despite the fact that in the final text of the declaration, the language pertaining to rights to marine resources and sea space were considerably watered down from what was stated in the draft that had been circulated in the years prior to its final inauguration. And I must also add that I am not all that proud of the role that my own government, that of Norway, and I don't hesitate to say even the Sami, the role that they played in this. They did not stand up for those rights with a determination and vigor that one could have expected. But it may have been a necessary compromise in order to save the declaration. Still, the declaration does contain important principles regarding indigenous peoples' rights to livelihood, culture, natural resources, and self-determination. In the negotiation, the letter S in peoples was a tough one because it determines whether we are talking about individual or collective rights. In the final text, however, the S stayed to the relief of indigenous peoples around the world, of course. My third point is therefore this. Since the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is drawn from human rights principles and legislation that are universal, they have a broader relevance than the Declaration might suggest. It would be a great thing if small-scale fishing people would have a similar declaration, as I understand was also an idea entertained at the Civil Society pre-conference workshop. If such a declaration is what you should decide to go for, a lesson from the process on the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is that you should be prepared for a long haul. The declaration took a long time to develop. It didn't come by itself or because governments championed it. It came as a result of decades of struggle by the indigenous movement. You would, however, need support from outside the civil society, like the FAO, because you have powerful interests working against you. Fourthly, and finally, let me say that even if you keep bashing us academics a bit, we are an important ally, as we also were with the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Our contribution is indeed needed because the knowledge that our research creates is essential in describing the situation, defining the problems, in highlighting the issues, and in bringing them to the table.